When Linda Ashford strutted into my living room on Christmas Eve with 25 of her closest friends trailing behind her, she expected a lavish spread, candlelit tables, and a hostess eager to please. Instead, what she found were empty tables, bare wood shining under twinkling fairy lights, no food, no music, not even a pitcher of water. Gasps filled the room. Nancy Clark, the neighborhood's self-appointed gossip queen, whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "What on earth is this? Did Hannah cancel?" Linda's smirk faltered. She'd promised her friends a holiday feast hosted at my neighbor Hannah's house. She doesn't mind, it's fun for her. Now, her cheeks burned red as eyes darted toward her, confusion turning into judgment. I wasn't even there to see it. At that very moment, I was stepping off a plane in Florida, finally choosing my dignity over her arrogance. And while Linda thought the humiliation would end with those empty tables, she had no idea the real storm, one that would strip her pride and expose her lies, was still to come. I moved to Boca Raton 3 years ago with dreams of sunshine, palm trees, and the kind of community you see in those impossibly perfect lifestyle magazines. After 15 years of teaching third graders in Boston, where winter stretched for half the year and my apartment barely fit a decent bookshelf, Florida promised space, warmth, and a fresh start. The little coral-colored house on Pelican Drive wasn't grand, just a modest 3-bedroom with a screened lanai and enough yard for the garden I'd always wanted, but it was mine. Every morning, I'd wake up to sunlight streaming through plantation shutters, birds calling from the royal palm in my front yard, and a sense of possibility that had been missing from my life for too long. "You're going to love it here, Hannah," my realtor had promised on closing day. Sunset Palms is known for its community spirit. People look out for each other here. I believed her. Maybe that was my first mistake. I met Linda Ashford 1 week after moving in. She appeared at my doorstep in white linen pants and a turquoise blouse that complemented her expertly highlighted blonde hair, holding a gift basket wrapped in cellophane. "Welcome to the neighborhood, darling. I'm Linda, 3 doors down in the Mediterranean with the blue shutters." Her smile was dazzling, her voice warm with the hint of a southern accent that she deployed like a weapon of charm. I invited her in for coffee, grateful for the friendly gesture. My moving boxes still lined the hallway, and I apologized for the chaos. "Oh, don't you worry about that," she said, waving a manicured hand dismissively. "We're all family here." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "And speaking of family, we're having a little neighborhood get-together this Saturday. Nothing fancy, just cocktails by the pool. You simply must come. Everyone's dying to meet you." That Saturday, I spent an hour choosing the right outfit and another 20 minutes making a homemade key lime pie, wanting to make a good impression. Linda's little get-together turned out to be a catered affair for 30 people around her resort-style pool, complete with hired servers and a bartender mixing specialty cocktails. "Hannah!" Linda called out when I arrived, air kissing both my cheeks. "Everyone, this is our new neighbor, Hannah Wilson. She's a teacher. Isn't that precious?" The way she said teacher made it sound like an adorable but impractical career choice, like professional bubble blower or butterfly collector. "And look what she's brought us, a homemade pie. Aren't you just the sweetest thing?" I smiled, already feeling the subtle shift in power dynamics. Linda as the gracious queen bee, me as the quaint newcomer grateful for her attention. That night established the pattern for our relationship. Linda introduced me to everyone, bringing me into the fold of Sunset Palms' social scene. I was grateful, truly. After years of working such long hours that friendships had fallen by the wayside, it felt good to be included. What I didn't realize was that with Linda, inclusion came with conditions. It started small. "Hannah, would you mind bringing your amazing spinach dip to the book club meeting? Everyone raves about it." Or, "Darling, could you possibly help me arrange flowers for the garden party? You have such an artistic touch." Each request came with flattery. Each favor returned with effusive thanks and promises of reciprocation that somehow never materialized. Before long, I was baking for HOA meetings, helping decorate for community events, and staying late to clean up while Linda collected compliments. "Isn't Hannah just a treasure?" she'd say, arms slung around my shoulders as I balanced a stack of dirty plates. I don't know what we'd do without her. What began as occasional assistance gradually became an expectation. When new neighbors moved in, Linda would volunteer my home for welcome coffees. "Hannah's place has that cozy, lived-in charm," she'd explain, as if my home's greatest attribute was making her Mediterranean mansion look more impressive by comparison. I noticed it happening, but couldn't seem to stop the slide. Each time I considered saying no, Linda would mention how much everyone appreciated me, how I was now part of the Sunset Palms family. The implied threat was clear: refuse, and that belonging might be withdrawn. Nancy Clark, a retired legal secretary with a penchant for tracking neighborhood indiscretions, seemed to take particular interest in our dynamic. "Linda's really taken you under her wing, hasn't she?" she remarked one day as we both deadheaded flowers in the community garden. The way she said it, with a pitying glance over her reading glasses, made my cheeks burn. "We help each other out," I said, more defensively than I intended. Nancy just smiled, a knowing look that said she saw right through the lie. By the end of my first year in Sunset Palms, I had become Linda's unofficial assistant, reliable backup, and convenient scapegoat when things went wrong. If the coffee was too weak at the book club I hosted in my living room, Linda would sigh dramatically, "Oh, Hannah, we really must teach you how to make a proper brew." If her friends loved the cookies I'd baked for her charity luncheon, she'd accept compliments with, "I gave Hannah my special recipe. She's still learning, bless her heart." I told myself it was the price of belonging, of having a community after years of loneliness. And there were genuine friendships forming, particularly with Olivia Grant, a retired professor who lived on the corner and seemed immune to Linda's manipulations. "You know, you don't have to jump every time Linda snaps her fingers," Olivia told me, one evening as we shared a bottle of wine on my lanai. "The neighborhood wouldn't exile you." I laughed it off, but her words lingered. Why did I keep saying yes? Had I become so accustomed to being needed, by my students, by the school, by everyone except myself, that I couldn't recognize when being needed tipped into being used? I promised myself I'd establish better boundaries. Next time I'd say no. But then came the HOA Christmas party, where my cranberry cake earned rave reviews, credited naturally to Linda's mentorship, and the spring cleanup, where I somehow ended up planting flowers in 3 neighbors' yards, while Linda supervised with a glass of sweet tea, and the 4th of July barbecue, where I grilled 60 hamburgers in 90-degree heat, while Linda held court from the shade. Each time I told myself, next time will be different. Each time, it wasn't, until Linda pushed too far. December in Florida lacks the snowy romance of a New England Christmas, but Sunset Palms compensated with enough twinkling lights to be visible from space. Palm trees wrapped in LED strands lined our streets, inflatable snowmen wobbled incongruously on emerald lawns, and the community clubhouse became a showcase for Martha Stewart-worthy holiday decor. For me, Christmas had always been a complicated season. After my parents passed away, Dad from a heart attack my first year of teaching, Mom from cancer 2 years later, the holidays became a reminder of absence rather than togetherness. In Boston, I'd volunteer for extra school events and charity work, filling the emptiness with purpose. This year, I'd made a different plan. A small gift to myself, 3 days at a quiet beachside hotel in Key West, away from forced cheer and pitying looks when people learned I had no plans with family. I'd booked it back in September, a non-refundable reservation that represented, in my mind, a small act of self-care. I hadn't told anyone about my plans, partly because it seemed self-indulgent, but mostly because I knew Linda would find a way to make me cancel. I was right. The ambush came on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-December. I had just pulled into my driveway, arms full of grocery bags, when Linda's golf cart, her preferred method of neighborhood transportation, whirred to a stop beside me. "Hannah, just the person I needed to see." Her voice rang with that particular tone that meant she'd already decided what I would be doing. She hopped out, designer sunglasses pushed up into her hair, looking like she'd stepped out of a luxury resort catalog. I balanced my groceries, forcing a smile. "Hi, Linda. What's up?" "Christmas Eve," she announced, as if that explained everything. When I didn't immediately respond with appropriate enthusiasm, she elaborated, "I'm hosting the most fabulous holiday soiree this year. Just an intimate gathering of my closest friends. No more than 25 people." My stomach sank. "That sounds lovely. I hope you all have a wonderful time." Linda laughed, that tinkling sound that always preceded her most outrageous requests. "Oh, darling, you misunderstand. We're having it at your house." I nearly dropped my bags. "My house?" "Yes. Everyone adores your place during the holidays. It has that," she waved her hand vaguely, "that cozy, nostalgic charm, like something from a Hallmark movie." What she meant was that my home, with its vintage furniture and personal touches, provided a more authentic Christmas backdrop than her minimalist showplace with its white-on-white decor and contemporary art. I was being asked to Provide the setting for her perfect holiday Instagram moments. Linda, I don't think it's all arranged, she interrupted smoothly. Cocktails at 7, dinner at 8. Nothing too complicated, just a traditional Christmas feast. Her smile widened. You're such a wonderful cook, and everyone talks about how much they adore your hospitality. I stood there, grocery bags cutting into my arms, mind racing. But Linda, it'll be fun for you, she insisted, patting my arm. And honestly, it's not like you have other plans, right? Better than spending Christmas Eve alone. The casual cruelty of her assumption, that of course I had nowhere to be, no one who wanted me, struck like a physical blow. 3 years of accumulated resentments crystallized in that moment. Every backhanded compliment, every expectation that my time was less valuable than hers, every public reinforcement of my role as the neighborhood helper. I should have said no right then. Should have told her about my reservation, should have stood up for myself. Instead, I mumbled something noncommittal and escaped into my house, hands shaking as I put away my groceries. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Linda's words. It'll be fun for you. As if hosting, cooking, and cleaning for her and 24 guests was a favor she was doing me. By morning, something had shifted inside me. For years, not just with Linda, but in my whole life, I'd been the accommodating one, the reliable one, the one who said yes when she meant no. I'd built my identity around being needed, convinced myself that being useful was the same as being valued, but there was a difference between being kind and being a doormat, between helping others and erasing myself. I pulled out my phone and looked at my hotel reservation, 3 days of solitude, ocean views, and answering to no one. Then I opened my neighborhood social media group where Linda had already posted Christmas Eve celebration at Hannah's, can't wait for her famous roast turkey and mulled wine. Comments were pouring in. Hannah is such a sweetheart to host, and lucky Linda having Hannah to handle all the cooking. Nancy Clark had chimed in too. Poor Hannah, always taken advantage of by certain people who shall remain nameless. But that's our Hannah, never says no. I closed the app, a strange calm settling over me. For 3 years, I'd been cast in a role I never auditioned for, the neighborhood's perpetual helper, reliable and forgettable. It was time for a rewrite. Over the next week, Linda's Christmas Eve plans expanded like rising dough. The guest list grew from 25 to 30, the menu from simple holiday fare to a 5-course extravaganza featuring dishes I'd never even heard of. Each day brought a new text. Message. Hannah, darling, could we add a seafood appetizer course? Nothing fancy, just something with lobster. Or, I forgot to mention, the Hendersons are vegan now. You'll accommodate, won't you? I responded to each message with the same reply. I'll take care of everything. And I meant it, just not in the way Linda assumed. In the midst of this, I ran into Olivia at the community mailboxes. Her sharp eyes noticed my distraction as I sorted through holiday cards. You seem troubled, Hannah, she said, leaning against the mailbox. At 72, Olivia maintained the straight posture and direct gaze of the professor she'd been for 40 years. Nothing escaped her notice. Just holiday stress, I replied, attempting a smile. Ah, she nodded knowingly. Linda's Christmas Eve. Extravaganza, I presume. Nancy's been talking about it nonstop. Apparently, you're single-handedly creating the event of the season. I hesitated, then made a decision. Olivia, can I trust you with something? Her eyes sparkled. My dear, I've kept faculty secrets that would make your hair curl. What's on your mind? We walked to her house, a modest bungalow filled with books and artifacts from, her travels. Over tea served in delicate cups that had belonged to her grandmother. I confessed my plan. I booked a trip to Key West months ago. Non-refundable. 3 days of peace, starting Christmas Eve. Olivia's eyebrows rose. And Linda's party? There won't be one. Not at my house, anyway. The words felt dangerous, thrilling. I'm going to decorate as if I'm preparing to host. Tables, place settings, lights, everything but food and drinks. And then I'm going to get on a plane. I expected shock or disapproval. Instead, Olivia threw back her head and laughed, a rich, full sound that filled her small living room. Oh, Hannah, that's magnificent. She wiped a tear from her eye. It's about time. You don't think it's cruel? The question had been gnawing at me. Olivia set down her teacup with a decisive clink. What's cruel is how Linda has treated you for 3 years. What's cruel is announcing a party at your home without asking, assuming your time has no value, and taking credit for your work. She leaned forward. This isn't revenge, Hannah, it's a boundary. Her approval lightened something in my chest. I'm still nervous. What if everyone hates me afterwards? Some might, Olivia acknowledged. Those who enjoy the social hierarchy exactly as it is. But others, she smiled mysteriously. Well, you might be surprised how many people have been waiting for someone to stand up to our neighborhood queen. That conversation gave me the courage to proceed. In the days that followed, I transformed my house into a Christmas fantasy. I hung garlands along the mantel, arranged poinsettias on the porch, and set up my dining room and lanai with elegant tables, each adorned with candles and holly centerpieces. I strung fairy lights across the ceiling, creating a canopy of twinkling stars. Linda stopped by twice, each time adding more demands to her growing list. She barely noticed my quiet compliance, too busy envisioning her moment of triumph as hostess of the year. The Wilsons want to bring their new neighbors. That's not a problem, is it? She asked on her second visit, wandering through my dining room to inspect my table settings. Oh, and I told everyone dinner's at 8 sharp. I know that's a bit earlier than we discussed, but you can manage, can't you? Of course, I replied, straightening a napkin. Everything will be ready. She paused, finally registering my calm. You seem different, Hannah. Is everything all right? I smiled. Never better. Just focused on making Christmas Eve perfect. Linda beamed, mistaking my serenity for submission. That's what I love about you. Always reliable. She patted my arm. I've told everyone how lucky I am to have you handling all the tedious details while I take care of the important things. And what are those? I couldn't help asking. She laughed, oblivious to my tone. Making everything magical, of course. The atmosphere, the conversation. That special touch only I can provide. She headed for the door, calling over her shoulder. I'll be here at 6:30 to help direct the final touches. Wear something festive but not too attention-grabbing. As her golf cart whirred away, I felt, not anger, but a strange pity. Linda's entire identity was wrapped up in appearances, in being admired and envied. She'd never know the freedom of being true to herself, even if that truth was imperfect. 2 days before Christmas Eve, I confirmed my flight and hotel reservations. I arranged for my mail to be held and asked my neighbor Martin, a retired accountant who kept to himself, to keep an eye on my house. He was one of the few people in Sunset Palms who existed outside Linda's social orbit, and therefore perfect for my needs. Going somewhere? He asked when I explained my request. A short trip, very last minute, I replied, not elaborating. Martin nodded, uninterested in gossip. I'll make sure no one breaks in. Have a good holiday, Hannah. The night before my departure, I made one final sweep of my house. The tables were set beautifully, the decorations perfect, the atmosphere festive and welcoming. I'd even printed a small card for each place setting. Merry Christmas from Hannah Wilson. Everything was ready. Everything except me. As I packed my suitcase, doubts crept in. Was I being childish? Should I just cancel my trip, cook the dinner, and accept my role as Linda's personal caterer? It would certainly cause less drama. Then my phone chimed with a text from Linda. Don't forget, mini quiches for the vegetarians. And the Robertsons are bringing their college-age son, so we'll need an extra place setting. Thanks, doll. Not please, not would you mind. Not even the pretense of asking rather than telling. I finished packing. On Christmas Eve morning, I woke early, made coffee, and sat on my lanai watching the sunrise. My flight wasn't until noon, giving me plenty of time for one last check of the house. The tables looked stunning in the morning light, bare but beautiful, a testament to what could have been if respect had been part of the equation. I adjusted a candle, straightened a place card, and felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. At 10 o'clock, I locked up, loaded my suitcase into my car, and drove to the airport, leaving behind a house that was both perfectly prepared and completely empty, much like how I'd felt for the past 3 years. The Fort Lauderdale airport buzzed with holiday travelers, families reuniting, couples holding hands, solo adventurers like me seeking something different from the season. I checked my bag, navigated security, and found myself with an hour to spare before boarding. Sitting at the gate, I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see the inevitable barrage of messages that would start around 6, when Linda would arrive at my house expecting to find a feast in progress. Instead, I watched people. A grandmother embracing her adult children, tears streaming down lined cheeks. 2 young men, in matching ugly Christmas sweaters, fingers intertwined as they studied their boarding passes. A harried mother corralling 3 excited children while her partner juggled their carry-ons. Everyone connected to someone. Everyone belonging somewhere. For a moment, doubt crept back in. Was I making a terrible mistake? Would this act of defiance cost me the community I'd worked so hard to join? First time traveling alone for Christmas? I turned to find an elderly woman smiling at me from the next seat, her silver hair elegantly coiffed, her eyes kind behind stylish glasses. Is it that obvious? I asked. She laughed. You have that look. Half liberation, half terror. I remember it well from my first solo Christmas 30 years ago. She extended a hand. I'm Eleanor. Hannah. We shook. And yes, first time alone. By choice, actually. Those are the best kind, Eleanor replied. My husband died when I was 42. After 2 years of enduring pitying invitations to other people's family celebrations, I decided to take myself to Paris for Christmas instead. Best decision I ever made. Did people understand? She snorted. Lord, no. They were scandalized. How could you spend Christmas alone? As if being surrounded by people who make you feel lonely isn't far worse than peaceful solitude. Her words resonated deeply. How many social events had I attended where I'd felt more alone in a crowd than I ever did in my quiet house? I'm not sure what I'm doing is right, I confessed, surprising myself. I've left behind a situation that, well, it's complicated. Eleanor patted my hand. My dear, at my age, you learn that right and wrong aren't always clear-cut. Sometimes the most right thing you can do is honor yourself, even when others call it wrong. Before I could respond, the gate agent announced boarding for our flight. Eleanor and I were in different sections, so we said our goodbyes. Enjoy your liberation, Hannah, she said with a wink. Whatever. You've left behind, I suspect it needed leaving. On the plane, I secured my window seat and watched the ground crew through the small oval window. Workers in bright vests loaded luggage, checked equipment, moved with purpose. Each person doing their job, not someone else's. As the plane backed away from the gate, I felt a weight lifting, the accumulated expectations of 3 years slipping away, with each foot of distance. By the time we reached cruising altitude, somewhere above the clouds between my old life and whatever came next, I was smiling. The flight attendant noticed. Someone's having a good day, she remarked as she offered me a drink. I am, I realized, accepting a ginger ale. I really am. For the first time in years, I wasn't responsible for anyone's happiness but my own. No one was counting on me to provide food, comfort, or entertainment. No one was judging my home, my cooking, or my value based on what I could do for them. I was just Hannah Wilson, teacher, traveler, woman reclaiming her dignity, 1 mile at a time. By the time we began our descent into Key West, it was nearly 5 o'clock. In less than 2 hours, Linda would be arriving at my empty house, expecting a Christmas feast and finding nothing but beautifully set tables and silent rooms. The thought should have filled me with anxiety. Instead, I felt only clarity. This wasn't about hurting Linda or getting revenge. It was about finally saying what I'd been unable to say for years. My time, my home, and my self-respect were not community property. As the plane touched down on the small island runway, I turned my phone back on. It immediately began buzzing with notifications. 12 text messages, 5 voicemails, numerous social media alerts. I ignored them all and hailed a taxi to my hotel. The Ocean Breeze Inn wasn't luxurious, but it was exactly what I needed. A small boutique hotel with pastel-colored cottages arranged around a garden courtyard. My room featured a queen bed, with crisp white linens, a private porch with Adirondack chairs, and blessed quiet. I unpacked, showered, and changed into a sundress, a far cry from the festive but not attention-grabbing outfit Linda had prescribed for me. At the hotel's open-air restaurant, I ordered a glass of wine and seafood pasta, then settled in to watch the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was nearly 8 o'clock, the time Linda's dinner was supposed to begin. I imagined the scene back in Boca Raton, the confused guests, Linda's mounting panic, the whispers and speculations. Part of me felt guilty for the innocent bystanders caught in my act of rebellion. But another part, the part that had been silenced for too long, understood that sometimes a dramatic gesture was the only way to break an unhealthy pattern. I finally looked at my phone. The texts were mostly from Linda, evolving from breezy, on my way with the wine, to confused, where are you? Guests arriving soon? To frantic, call me now. The voicemails followed a similar trajectory, her voice rising in pitch and urgency with each message. The final text, sent at 7:45, simply read, "How could you do this to me?" Not to us. Not even acknowledging that this was supposed to be my home, my labor, my sacrifice. In her mind, this was something I had done to her, because everything in Linda's world revolved around Linda. I put the phone away without responding. Tomorrow would be time enough to face the consequences. Tonight was for me. As I sipped my wine and watched the stars emerge above the Gulf of Mexico, I thought about Eleanor's words. Sometimes the most right thing you can do is honor yourself, even when others call it wrong. For the first time in years, I felt right. Christmas morning dawned clear and warm in Key West. I woke early, made coffee in my room, and carried it out to my small private porch. Palm trees swayed in a gentle breeze, and somewhere nearby, a mockingbird sang its complex melody. Peace. It lasted exactly 17 minutes before my phone rang. Linda's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then watched as texts began arriving in rapid succession. "Where are you? Everyone is furious. You've humiliated me in front of the entire neighborhood. I thought we were friends." I put the phone on silent and placed it face down on the small table beside me. Today was Christmas. Whatever storm I had unleashed would still be there tomorrow. After breakfast at a small cafe where the server called me honey and didn't ask why I was alone on Christmas, I walked to the beach. The shoreline was surprisingly busy. Other solo travelers, couples escaping family obligations, locals enjoying their island paradise. I spread a towel on the sand and settled in with a book I'd been meaning to read for months. The sun warmed my skin, the waves provided a soothing soundtrack, and for hours I existed in a bubble of tranquility. It wasn't until late afternoon, as I was getting ready for dinner, that I finally checked my social media. The Sunset Palms community page had exploded. Linda had posted first, devastated and betrayed by someone I considered a friend. Left stranded with 30 guests and no food after promising to host Christmas Eve dinner, some people show their true colors during the holidays. Comments poured in beneath her post, some expressing shock and sympathy for Linda, others asking pointed questions that remained unanswered. Nancy Clark, predictably, had the most to say. "We all arrived at Hannah's house to find beautifully set tables, but no food, no drinks, and no Hannah." Linda in tears claiming Hannah had abandoned her dinner party. But wait, wasn't this supposed to be at Linda's house originally? And did Hannah actually agree to host? Or was this another case of Linda volunteering Hannah without asking? The plot thickens. I scrolled through dozens of messages, watching the neighborhood divide into factions. Team Linda expressed outrage at my rudeness and lack of Christmas spirit. Team Reality, as I privately termed them, asked increasingly uncomfortable questions about how the party came to be at my house in the first place. Olivia had remained conspicuously silent, but she had liked several comments questioning Linda's version of events. Finally, just that morning, Martin, my quiet neighbor who'd agreed to watch my house, had broken his usual social media silence with a simple post. "Just to clarify, Hannah asked me to keep an eye on her house days before Christmas Eve. She had prior travel plans that predated any party arrangements. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding about her availability to host." His neutral, fact-based statement had garnered more reactions than any of the outraged comments. I put down my phone, surprisingly calm. The truth was emerging without my having to defend myself. The community was finally seeing what had been happening in plain sight for years. I dressed for dinner, a small Christmas feast the hotel had arranged for its guests. In the courtyard, tables had been set up under strings of twinkling lights, creating an intimate atmosphere for the 20 or so. People who, like me, had chosen a different kind of holiday. Eleanor, my companion from the airport, was there with her daughter who had flown in from Seattle. They waved me over to join them. "I hoped I'd see you again," Eleanor said, patting the empty chair beside her. "Hannah, this is my daughter, Sophia. Sophia, this is the brave soul I told you about. First solo Christmas." Sophia, a woman about my age with her mother's kind eyes, smiled. "Welcome to the tradition. Mom's been doing this for decades, finding new places to celebrate instead of getting trapped in obligations that make her miserable. Your mother gave me some excellent advice at just the right moment," I told her, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. "That's her superpower," Sophia laughed. "Mom has no filter, but impeccable timing." As we ate and talked, I found myself sharing the full story of Linda, the neighborhood dynamic, and my dramatic exit. Both women listened intently, occasionally exchanging glances. "Good for you," Eleanor said when I finished. "Too many women spend their lives accommodating others at their own expense. I wasted 20 years doing exactly that before I learned better." "What happened?" I asked. "My husband died," she said matter-of-factly. And suddenly, All the people who'd been happy to let me serve their needs scattered like leaves in the wind. That's when I realized that being needed isn't the same as being valued. She raised her glass. To boundaries. Better late than never. We clinked glasses, and for the rest of the evening, we talked about everything except Linda Ashford and sunset palms. Sophia was a marine biologist studying coral reefs. Eleanor had just returned from a month in Portugal. Their lives were fascinating, expansive, unconfined by the narrow parameters of neighborhood politics. By the time we said goodnight, exchanging contact information and promises to stay in touch, I felt more connected to these strangers than I had to most of my friends back home. In my room, I finally checked my messages again. Among the texts from Linda and various neighbors was one from Olivia. The Empress has no clothes and everyone's finally noticing. Take all the time you need. Things are shifting here. Merry Christmas, my brave friend. I slept deeply that night, without dreams or interruptions. When I woke the next morning, I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. My remaining 2 days in Key West passed in a blur of small pleasures. A sunset cruise where dolphins played in the boat's wake, a walking tour of Hemingway's house with its famous six-toed cats, hours spent reading in a hammock with the ocean breeze cooling my skin. I didn't check social media again. Whatever was happening in Sunset Palms would wait for my return. On the morning of my flight home, I found myself both dreading and eager to face what awaited me. The old Hannah might have extended her stay, avoiding conflict at all costs. The new Hannah packed her bag, thanked the hotel staff, and headed to the airport with her head held high. As the plane lifted off, carrying me back to a community in turmoil and a reputation in flux, I realized I was no longer afraid. Whatever came next, judgment, exile, understanding, I would face it as my authentic self, not as the convenient helper persona I'd hidden behind for so long. It was time to go home and reclaim my place, not as the neighborhood's doormat, but as Hannah Wilson, a woman of dignity and worth. I returned to Boca Raton on December 28th, bracing for immediate confrontation. But Sunset Palms was strangely quiet as my taxi pulled into the subdivision. Holiday decorations still adorned the houses, but the festive energy had dissipated, replaced by the subdued lull between Christmas and New Year's. My house looked exactly as I'd left it. Tables still set for a party that never happened, candles unlit, fairy, lights dark. I wandered through the rooms, struck by how theatrical it all seemed now. A stage set for a performance that had taken an unexpected turn. I was dismantling the dining room table when my doorbell rang. My heart jumped, but when I peered through the peephole, it wasn't Linda's perfectly highlighted hair I saw, but Olivia's silver crown. "Welcome home, revolutionary," she said when I opened the door, holding up a bottle of wine. "Thought you might need this for the debriefing." We settled on my lanai with glasses of Cabernet as the Florida sunset painted the sky. For a moment, we just sat in comfortable silence, watching the colors change. "So," I finally said, "what did I miss?" Olivia's eyes twinkled. "Oh, my dear, where to begin?" Linda's Christmas Eve disaster has become the stuff of neighborhood legend. She described the scene. Linda arriving at my house at 6:30, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her months ago for emergencies, finding the tables set but the kitchen empty, assuming I was running late, greeting early guests with increasing anxiety. By 7:15, she was in full panic mode, Olivia continued. Calling your phone, sending people to look for you, insisting you must have had an accident because Hannah would never let me down. When it became clear I wasn't coming, Linda tried to salvage the evening by ordering pizza. But on Christmas Eve, every restaurant was either closed or overwhelmed with orders. "The Hendersons ended up making a grocery store run," Olivia said, refilling our glasses. "They cobbled together some cheese, plates, and crackers. The Wilsons brought the alcohol from their home bar. It was quite the potluck of desperation." I winced, feeling a twinge of guilt for the innocent bystanders. "I never meant to ruin everyone's Christmas Eve." "You didn't," Olivia assured me. Most people adapted quickly. It actually became something of an adventure. By 9 o'clock, it had turned into an impromptu community effort with everyone contributing what they could. Quite heartwarming, really. She paused. "Except for Linda. How bad was it?" "Epic." First came the tears. How could Hannah do this to me? Then the character assassination. I always knew she was unreliable. And finally, the most telling slip of all, after everything I've done for her, letting her be part of our community. I flinched at the words, so familiar, yet still painful. That's when the tide turned, Olivia continued. Nancy Clark, of all people, spoke up. Letting her be part of our community, she said. Hannah is our community. She's baked for every function, hosted every meeting, helped every newcomer feel welcome, while you've taken credit for her efforts. I nearly choked on my wine. Nancy said that? To Linda's face? Indeed. Olivia looked satisfied. It seems our neighborhood gossip has been keeping careful notes on Linda's behavior for years. Once she started, others joined in. People shared stories, how Linda volunteered your home without asking, how she took credit for your cooking, how she talked about you when you weren't around. What did Linda do? Left in tears, claiming to be attacked and misunderstood. She hasn't been seen in public since. Olivia's expression softened. The interesting part came after she left. Instead of dispersing, everyone stayed. They rearranged the tables, pooled their improvised food, and had what many are calling the most genuine Christmas gathering in Sunset Palms history. I tried to picture it. My empty house filled with neighbors coming together not because of Linda's orchestration, but despite its absence. They missed you, Olivia added quietly. Many people expressed regret for not seeing sooner how Linda treated you, for not speaking up. There's been a lot of soul-searching these past few days. I stared into my wine, emotions swirling. I didn't do this for revenge. I know that. And so do most people. Now, your absence forced everyone to, see what had been happening right in front of them. She reached across to squeeze my hand. You taught this community an important lesson about taking people for granted. After Olivia left, I continued dismantling the Christmas decorations, my mind processing everything she'd shared. Part of me felt validated, but another part mourned the simplicity of my former role. Being the helper, while exhausting, had been straightforward. Standing up for myself was messier, more complicated. The next morning brought a stream of visitors. First came Nancy Clark, bearing a poinsettia and an awkward apology. I knew what Linda was doing to you, she admitted, standing stiffly in my foyer. I gossiped about it instead of confronting it. That makes me complicit. She thrust the plant at me. I'm sorry, Hannah. And I'm glad you stood up for yourself. It was past time. The Hendersons came next, then the Wilsons, each bringing small gifts and similar sentiments. Acknowledgements of their blind spots, appreciation for my past generosity, assurances that my place in the community was secure. By afternoon, I'd accumulated enough baked goods and wine bottles to host the party that never was. Martin stopped by as I was arranging the gifts on my kitchen counter. Quite the diplomatic crisis you've created, he remarked dryly. Not intentionally, I replied. He shrugged. Intentions aside, it was effective. Linda's been the neighborhood bully for years. Subtle but relentless. Someone needed to stand up to her. He handed me a gift bag. Saw this and thought of you. Inside was a small, wooden plaque that read, "No is a complete sentence." I laughed. Thank you, Martin, for this and for having my back on social media. Just stated facts, he said, already heading for the door. That's usually enough to cut through drama. One person remained conspicuously absent. Linda herself. According to neighborhood gossip, she'd barricaded herself in her Mediterranean villa, emerging only to collect her mail and walk her Pomeranian at odd hours when she was unlikely to encounter neighbors. Part of me felt sorry for her. For all her social manipulation, Linda's need for admiration suggested a profound insecurity that no amount of control could satisfy. But sympathy didn't equal obligation. I was done being Linda's emotional support human, her unpaid caterer, her convenient scapegoat. My phone pinged with a text message as I was preparing dinner. Expecting another neighbor, I was surprised to see Eleanor's name. Checking in on my favorite Christmas rebel. How's the homecoming? I smiled, typing back. Surprisingly positive. The community seems to have undergone a revelation in my absence. Wonderful. People often rise to occasions when given the chance. Any sign of the neighborhood tyrant? Not yet. She's gone into hiding. Eleanor's response came quickly. That won't last. Bullies need attention like plants need sunlight. Prepare yourself. She'll emerge when she has a strategy. I stared at the message, a chill running through me despite the warm evening. Eleanor was right. This wasn't over. Linda wouldn't relinquish her social position without a fight. And, knowing Linda, that fight would be carefully calculated for maximum damage. Eleanor's prediction proved accurate. Linda emerged from her self-imposed exile on New Year's Eve, just as Sunset Palms was preparing for its annual community celebration at the clubhouse. I'd decided to attend despite my misgivings. Olivia insisted it was important for me to show my face. Don't give her the satisfaction of thinking she's driven you away. And deep down, I knew she was right. Avoiding the event would only reinforce Linda's narrative that I was the villain in this scenario. So I put on a simple black dress, applied makeup with more care than usual, and walked to the clubhouse with Olivia by my side, her presence a silent declaration of allegiance. The community room had been transformed with silver and gold decorations, a small dance floor cleared in the center, tables arranged around the perimeter laden with potluck contributions. Nearly everyone from the neighborhood was there, dressed in their holiday best, glasses of champagne already in hand, though it was barely 8 o'clock. A hush fell over the room when I entered. Then Nancy Clark broke the silence, striding over with determined cheerfulness. "Hannah, so glad you could make it. Your cranberry brie bites are still the talk of last year's party, though I completely understand if you didn't have time to bake this year." The pointed reference to my newly established boundaries made me smile. Actually, I did bring something. I handed her the platter I was carrying, but store-bought this time. I'm experimenting with moderation. Nancy laughed, louder than the comment warranted, and just like that, the tension broke. People approached to say hello, conversations resumed, and I found myself welcomed back into the community, not as the reliable helper, but simply as Hannah, neighbor, and friend. I was chatting with the Hendersons when a collective intake of breath signaled Linda's arrival. She paused dramatically. In the doorway, a vision in a red sequined dress that caught the light with every movement. Her makeup was flawless, her smile dazzling, her husband Richard trailing behind her like an afterthought. She swept into the room, greeting people effusively, air-kissing cheeks, exclaiming over outfits and hairstyles as if nothing had changed. But I noticed the subtle shifts, the way conversations dimmed. As she approached, the polite rather than enthusiastic responses to her compliments, the quick glances in my direction. For nearly an hour, we managed a delicate choreography around the room, never coming close enough to speak. I relaxed slightly, thinking perhaps Linda had chosen to ignore me rather than confront me. It would be awkward but manageable. Then Mike Wilson, the HOA president, clinked his glass for attention. Before we get too deep into the champagne, I want to thank everyone who made tonight possible. The decorating committee did a fantastic job, and all these wonderful dishes. Actually, Mike, Linda interrupted, stepping forward with the smooth confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. I'd like to say something first, if I may. Mike hesitated, then nodded, stepping back. Linda moved to the center of the room, her red dress catching the light dramatically. "Friends and neighbors," she began, her voice pitched to Carrie. "As we prepare to welcome a new year, I've been reflecting on the importance of honesty and clear communication." My stomach tightened. Beside me, Olivia muttered, "Here we go." "Many of you know that Christmas Eve didn't go as planned this year," Linda continued, her expression a perfect blend of vulnerability and strength. "What you may not know is why." She turned slowly, making eye contact with various neighbors until her gaze finally landed on me. Hannah and I had a misunderstanding. I believed she had agreed to host a holiday dinner. She obviously felt differently. Murmurs rippled through the room. Linda raised a hand, silencing them with practiced ease. Rather than discuss her concerns with me directly, Hannah chose to leave town without warning, leaving not only me but 30 members of this community without the Christmas celebration they were expecting. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. The room was utterly silent. I've spent the past week soul-searching, trying to understand where our communication broke down. And I've realized that perhaps I've been too generous, too willing to involve Hannah in neighborhood activities, when she may have preferred to be left alone. The calculated twist, portraying herself as overly generous rather than controlling, was masterful. I felt eyes shifting toward me, reassessing. "So, tonight," Linda continued, her voice softening to a near whisper, that forced everyone to lean in, "I want to publicly apologize to Hannah for any misunderstanding. And I want to assure everyone in Sunset Palms that I've learned my lesson. I will no longer impose on Hannah's time and talents, no matter how much we've all come to rely on them." She raised her glass in my direction, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, to clear communication in the new year. For a moment, the room hung suspended in awkward silence. Linda had executed a perfect strategic move, apologizing without accepting blame, framing my absence as a petty reaction to a simple misunderstanding, positioning herself as the forgiving party. I felt the narrative slipping away from me, the truth being rewritten in real time by Linda's skilled performance. Then Olivia spoke, her clear, professor's voice cutting through the tension. That's very gracious, Linda. I'm sure Hannah appreciates your commitment to improved communication. She smiled thinly. Perhaps you could start by asking before announcing parties at other people's homes? A few nervous laughs broke out. Linda's smile froze. Or, Nancy added, unexpectedly joining Olivia's side, by giving credit when Hannah bakes. For your events instead of implying the recipes are yours? Linda's cheeks flushed beneath her perfect makeup. I've always given Hannah credit. No, you haven't, interrupted Susan Henderson, her usual timidity nowhere in evidence. You've treated Hannah like your personal assistant for years, and we've all seen it. We just didn't say anything because it was easier not to. The room erupted in overlapping voices, 3 years of observations and grievances suddenly finding expression. Linda stood motionless in the center, her glass still raised, her composure cracking as the tide of public opinion visibly turned against her. I hadn't said a word, didn't need to. The community was speaking for me, articulating what I'd never found the courage to say directly. Richard. Ashford appeared at his wife's side, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. I think we all need to calm down, he said, his voice strained. This is hardly the way to start a new year. No, Richard, Linda said, shaking off his arm. Her face had hardened, the mask of contrition replaced by cold anger. She turned to face me directly. Clearly Hannah has been busy poisoning the neighborhood against me while I was trying to be gracious. And there it was, the real Linda, emerging when her performance failed to achieve the desired result. I took a deep breath, aware that every eye in the room was on me, waiting for my response. This was the moment to set the record straight, to defend myself against her accusations, to counter her narrative with the truth. Instead, I simply said, Linda, I never wanted to poison anything. I just wanted to be treated with respect. The simplicity of the statement hung in the air. No accusations, no list of grievances, just the core truth that had been at the heart of the conflict all along. Linda's face contorted, then smoothed into a cold smile. Well, it seems I've misjudged the situation entirely. She set her untouched champagne on a nearby table with deliberate care. Richard, I believe we're leaving. She swept toward the exit, Richard trailing behind, the crowd parting silently to let them pass. At the doorway, she paused for one final remark, pitched loudly enough for everyone to hear. Enjoy your new neighborhood queen, everyone. I'm sure Hannah will be much more accommodating. The door closed behind them with a decisive click, leaving a ringing silence. Then Mike Wilson cleared his throat. Well, that was something. He raised his glass. How about we focus on the countdown now? Only 2 hours to midnight, folks. Conversations gradually resumed. The music was turned up, and the party found its rhythm again. People approached me in ones and twos, some offering support, others apologizing for not speaking up sooner, a few simply treating me with a new respect that acknowledged my right to boundaries. As midnight approached, Olivia found me on the patio, where I'd stepped out for a moment of quiet reflection. You did well in there, she said, handing me a fresh glass of champagne. Better than well. You maintained your dignity while Linda lost hers completely. I didn't want a public showdown, I admitted. I just wanted to be treated as an equal. And now you will be. Olivia gestured toward the party inside where people were laughing and dancing. Look at them, getting along perfectly fine without Linda orchestrating every interaction. Inside, Mike began the countdown. 10, 9, 8. To a new year, Olivia said, raising her glass. And a new chapter, I added, clinking my glass against hers. As midnight struck and cheers erupted inside, I looked up at the Florida stars, bright and clear in the winter sky. For the first time since moving to Sunset Palms, I felt truly at home. Not as the neighborhood helper, but as myself, Hannah Wilson, complete and worthy, exactly as I was. January unfolded like a gentle awakening. With Linda's social dominance shattered, Sunset Palms began to transform. The rigid hierarchy that had defined neighborhood interactions loosened, allowing new connections to form and old ones to deepen. I found myself at the center of this transformation, not because I sought power or control, but because I had inadvertently created space for authenticity. The first sign came when Susan Henderson approached me at the community mailboxes one sunny afternoon in early January. Hannah, I'm organizing a book club, she said, her voice still carrying a trace of the newfound confidence she'd displayed at the New Year's Eve party. Nothing fancy, just some women getting together to discuss books we actually want to read, not just the ones that look good on coffee tables. I smiled, recognizing the subtle reference to Linda's previous book club, where selections were based more on prestige than readability. That sounds wonderful. We're meeting at my house next Tuesday, Susan continued. I've already talked to Olivia, Nancy, and a few others. She hesitated. I wanted to make sure you know you're welcome to just come and participate. You don't need to bring food or help organize or anything like that. The careful clarification touched me deeply. Thank you, Susan. I'd love to join. The book club was just the beginning. Martin, my quiet neighbor, started a community garden project and asked me to help plan it. Not to do the work, but to contribute ideas as an equal partner. Mike Wilson reorganized the HOA committees to distribute responsibilities more evenly, ending the concentration of power that had allowed Linda to control so many aspects of community life. As for Linda herself, she adopted a strategy of icy dignity. When we passed on the street, she nodded curtly but never spoke. She withdrew from most community activities, attending only the mandatory HOA meetings where she sat silently, her expression carefully neutral. I heard from Olivia that Linda was redirecting her energies toward a country club across town, presumably seeking a fresh audience for her performance of perfection. Part of me felt sorry for her, always needing to be admired, never able to simply be. My own life expanded in unexpected ways. With my time no longer monopolized by Linda's demands, I reconnected with my passion for painting, setting up a small studio in my spare bedroom. I joined a local teachers group, sharing ideas and experiences with colleagues who understood the unique challenges of the classroom. And I stayed in touch with Eleanor, my Christmas Eve confidant, who visited from her home in Miami several times that spring. Her daughter Sophia invited me to join their annual unholiday tradition, a trip to somewhere unexpected during the Easter break. We spent a magical week, exploring New Orleans, 3 women of different generations united by our commitment to living authentically. One evening in late April, as I sat on my lanai enjoying the gentle Florida twilight, Olivia stopped by with a bottle of wine and news. Linda's putting her house on the market, she announced, settling into a chair across from me. Richard got a job offer in Atlanta, apparently too good to refuse. I absorbed this information, surprised by my lack of reaction. 6 months ago, the prospect of Linda leaving would have filled me with relief. Now it barely registered as significant. I hope they'll be happy there, I said, and meant it. Olivia studied me over her wine glass. You've changed, Hannah. Have I? She nodded. When you first moved here, you were contained, like someone who had drawn careful boundaries around herself to avoid getting hurt. Then Linda came along, and those boundaries collapsed. You gave and gave until there was almost nothing left. I remembered those early days, how desperate I'd been to belong, how willing to sacrifice my own needs for acceptance. But now, Olivia continued, you've found balance. You participate without disappearing. You help without becoming a doormat. You've become fully yourself. Her assessment warmed me. I had good examples, I said, raising my glass to her. You never bent to Linda's will. I had the advantage of age and tenure. Olivia laughed. By the time you reach 70, you've seen enough Linda Ashfords to recognize the type. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and the first stars appeared above the palm trees. The community gardening committee is meeting tomorrow, Olivia said eventually. Martin mentioned you had ideas about a children's section, plants that are safe for little hands to touch and taste. I nodded. I've been thinking about how to make it educational, labels with plant facts, maybe some simple science experiments. You should lead that project, Olivia suggested. Your teaching experience makes you perfect for it. A year ago, I would have demurred, minimizing my expertise or worrying about overstepping. Now I simply said, I'd like that. The next morning, I woke early and took my coffee to the garden, watching the sunrise paint the sky in delicate pinks and golds. A family of cardinals flitted among the bougainvillea, their bright red plumage vibrant against the green leaves. 3 years ago, I had moved to Sunset Palms seeking community and belonging. I'd found it, but not in the way I expected. True belonging, I now understood, wasn't about fitting in or being liked. It was about being seen and accepted for who you truly are. Strengths, weaknesses, boundaries, and all. My phone chimed with a text from Susan. Book. Club tonight. Lisa's bringing wine. I'm handling snacks. Just bring yourself. I smiled at the explicit permission to arrive empty-handed. Old habits died hard, but my friends were helping me rewrite the script. Later that day, as I walked to the community center for the gardening committee meeting, I passed Linda's house. A for sale sign had appeared overnight, making her departure official. She was in the front yard, directing a landscaper about last-minute improvements to boost curb appeal. Our eyes met across the street. For a moment, I thought she might ignore me, but then she raised a hand in a small wave. I returned the gesture, a silent acknowledgement of our shared history and impending separation. Neither of us moved to cross the street. There was nothing left to say, no relationship to repair or sustain. We had both moved on. Linda to a new audience, me to a more authentic life. At the community center, I found Martin already setting up for the meeting. Maps of the proposed garden space spread across a table. Perfect timing, he said, looking up. I was hoping to get your input on the children's section before everyone arrives. He made space for me at OW. The table treated my suggestions with respect, incorporated my ideas seamlessly with his own. As other committee members arrived, Susan, Mike, Nancy, neighbors I'd known for years but was only now truly connecting with, the discussion flowed easily, everyone's voice heard and valued. This was what I had been seeking all along. Not adoration or indispensability, but the simple dignity of equal, standing in a community of mutual respect. The meeting concluded with clear plans and assignments. Mine to design the educational components of the garden, a responsibility that aligned perfectly with my skills and interests. As we gathered our materials, Mike pulled me aside. Hannah, I've been meaning to ask, would you consider joining the HOA board next term? We need someone with your perspective. The old Hannah would have immediately said yes, eager to please, afraid to refuse. The new Hannah considered the request carefully, weighing her interest against her other commitments. I'd like to think about it, I replied honestly. Can I let you know next week? Mike nodded, unperturbed by my lack of immediate agreement. Of course. Take your time. Outside, the April afternoon was perfect. Warm sunshine, gentle breeze, the scent of jasmine in the air. I walked home slowly, savoring the moment, aware of how far I had come from that Christmas Eve when I'd boarded a plane to escape a life that no longer fit. On my porch steps sat a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. The card attached read, "For the woman who found her voice. With admiration, Eleanor." Inside was a beautiful journal bound in soft leather, its pages blank and waiting. On the first page, Eleanor had written a quote. "The most courageous act is still to think for yourself." Aloud. Coco Chanel. I ran my fingers over the words, feeling their truth in my bones. My journey hadn't been about winning a neighborhood power struggle or exposing Linda's manipulation. It had been about reclaiming my voice, my time, my sense of self-worth. That evening, as the sun set over Sunset Palms, I took the journal to my lanai and began to write. Not about Linda or the Christmas Eve rebellion or the community's transformation, though those stories would find their place eventually. Instead, I wrote about the woman I was becoming, the life I was creating, the future stretching before me like an open road. The neighborhood around me settled into its evening rhythm. Lights came on in windows, children were called in from play, dinner preparations hummed behind closed doors. Somewhere down the street, music drifted from an open window, a soft melody that spoke of possibility and joy. I belonged here, not because I had earned my place through service or sacrifice, but simply because I was here, fully and present, offering my authentic self to a community that had finally learned to value exactly that. The borrowed dignity I had once cobbled together from others' approval had been replaced by something far more precious and permanent, the unshakable knowledge of my own worth. In the growing darkness, I continued writing, filling the blank pages with my truth, one word at a time.